On this episode of Money and Power, colloquialisms, ampersands, and death. But first, Kid Inc.
I got the money and the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on? Yeah. Really ain't nothing I could drop that. Wake up in the morning, make it all okay. It's nothing.
Welcome to episode 26 of Money and Power, our weekly look at questions related to finance, politics, and culture. I'm your host, Nathan Martin, and joining me from Michigan, a financial consultant and host of the Rob Talks Money and Apologetics 105 podcasts, Rob Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And joining me in studio here in the crown jewel of rural Ohio, the masked executioner, Jeremiah Martin.
Gentlemen and ladies.
Together, we are the trio of talk, the triad of the tittle-tattle, and the triumvirate of the tete-a-tete. And we have got a great show in store. We're going to be talking about some controversial topics that we did not do much prep on because so I do not know where my fellow podcast hosts stand on the issue. So we'll all discover that together, go on that journey. But how are you guys been doing?
I had me a week. I could probably do a full podcast on the last week of my life. So it was a good time. My wife and I went away for a few days for our anniversary, and it was crazy. Like, we had crazy amount of fun, like ton of stories. It was nuts. We stayed at a bed and breakfast for the first time ever. That was unique. So yeah, it was a solid week. I had dinner with a vegan bartender, kind of a hippie, cool dude. So that was fun. Got to learn some perspective from that community. So that was neat. So yeah, it was a good time.
You had a dramatic pause there, and I was a little concerned. You were like, "We had dinner," and I was like, "It's a cool story, bro."
Yeah. Now we had dinner every night almost. So good times were had by all.
Around the same time every single night. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know if in Michigan they had like a weird distinction between supper and dinner. Like, normally we have supper, but wow, we had dinner.
Do you guys have supper or dinner?
A dinner.
We have dinner. Or normal.
I've used both. I don't know. We've grown up all over the country, so I've heard it both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Supper sounds old. Sounds like you're having bean soup if you're having supper.
So have you guys? So this is the first time you ever stayed in a bed and breakfast?
Yeah, and it was. It's just different. It's really cool. There's 4 or 5 other couples staying there, and we stayed at this. It's this old mansion in Zeeland, Michigan, that was renovated, and they kept everything in like it's the 1800s, but they just made it look super nice. I think it's called the Bart Barron Mansion, and it was pretty wild. And then, like, every morning you go down and they have this giant breakfast, which I'm used to, like, continental Best Western breakfast where it's like a cold bagel and cold coffee. But she's like, how would you like, your omelet or, this giant pieces of sausages or what the hell? It was awesome. It was a great time.
Yeah. So I've stayed.
I'm still riding that high.
I've stayed in a couple, and it really depends. They can be amazing or they can be very sad trombone. So anyways.
Yeah,
that.
So Nathan and I's wives went to Texas for a girls' weekend. We got killer deals on flights, and so they went to go spend time with family, some of our family and some of our Texas family, and so Nathan and I were we did the whole single dad thing through the weekend, and I don't know about Nathan, but it was very successful for me. Our kids mostly had 3 square meals, and the house didn't burn down. So yeah, I'd say a pretty successful weekend, and Emily had a good time. So yeah.
Did you guys co-parent together, like in the same house?
No, we barely saw each other.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
So I would have thought, because you guys have like 14 kids between the two of you.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I thought it'd just be like a giant rendition of Daddy Daycare, except both of you guys are white.
Yeah, I think we had 12, but I think after this weekend we had 11. I think we lost one somewhere along the way, but no. Yeah,
I was actually going to correct him, and then I was like, it's in double digits. It doesn't matter. It's
close.
still
close enough.
It's still more than 90% success rate,
Yeah.
so I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. We do foster care, so the numbers, they fluctuate so randomly. But anyways, yeah, no, my daughter's birthday is coming up, so my wife came to me and was like, hey, there's an opportunity for you to sleep over with teenage girls coming over, but I'm going to be gone. No pressure. I was like, what do you mean no pressure? Like, I can't say no to that or whatever. So, and my daughter wanted to go to a high school football game. That's what she wanted to do, because my daughter is at the age where she's homeschooled, so she feels like she's missing out on all this stuff, all this cool stuff that she's seen on Disney Channel, high school things. So she's like, I'm missing out on all this my social calendar. So take me to a high school football game, because that's the cool place to be.
Did she watch High School Musical and think that everyone's just breaking into song
100%.
between periods?
I think she was really disappointed. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So I went to the high school football game and sat pretty much by myself, because she and her friends went off to make other friends. And so she's, at the end of the night, she's rattling off the 15 other middle school girls that she's met and how they're best friends now for life. And yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. No. And then, of course,
It sounds fun.
we had a sleepover, and that was, I don't know if you've ever experienced a sleepover with teenage girls, but I think Dante would write a different chapter for that.
Well, personally, I have not experienced that, because someday I want to be appointed to the Supreme Court. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on.
Wow. And now it is time for our look back at the weird, the inane, and the general happenings going on in the world by the crazy people who happen to live here. News bits.
news bits, show me your bits of news.
All right. So, news bits. What do you got?
Hold on. First of all,
What?
so last week we did the Facebook Live, and I realized that when I did it live, because Rob didn't have the soundboard up, I actually said it wrong. I said it differently than I do in the jingle that we've used, pretty much since the beginning. So, yeah, a little out of practice there, but that's
What
why
did you
we've
say?
that's why we've got a soundboard. Oh, it's news bits. News bits, show me your bits. And I said last week, I said show us your bits or something like that. I said it wrong.
All right.
And I didn't realize it until I was listening back. I was like, that sounded awkward. Why did that sound awkward? It's because it was wrong. That's why we've
Well,
got
eventually-
that's why we've got a soundboard, Rob. Like, we need you.
Well, right. I'm still valuable. I'm going to go back and pull that clip for news bits, because you guys at the end were in perfect harmony. It was like listening to the Beatles after Lennon died. It was very good. So,
So good.
Oh my gosh. All right, Jeremiah, what do you got?
too soon?
All right. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of negativity out there, right? There's a lot that makes people concerned about the future of our country, the future of of humanity, both the left, the right, everyone in between, the importance of the midterm elections. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to worry us about the future, right? But if you ever needed convincing that we live in the best possible timeline, it is this story. So this comes from the Daily Caller. Michael Avenatti challenges Donald Trump Jr. to an MMA fight for charity. And I just love everything about this story. And so far, it hasn't been confirmed, but I really, really, really want this to happen. Attorney Michael Avenatti challenged Donald Trump Jr. to a 3-round mixed martial arts fight for charity Tuesday morning. The story was first reported by Dylan Byers, an NBC News senior media reporter. He and Avenatti discussed the potential philanthropy event at the Vanity Fair Summit. He said Michael Avenatti said on Twitter, "This would be for 2 great causes. I'm in." Trump Jr. has not tweeted about any potential fight with Avenatti, but they have sparred on social media in the past. So I don't know about you guys, but I just really, really, really hope this happens. And there's just so much to this story. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So we've got a creepy porn lawyer going up against the son of our president, who allegedly slept with the porn star who Michael Avenatti, the creepy porn lawyer, is defending. I love it. I'm sorry.
You know what I'd be looking forward to most is the pre-ring introductions. That guy's got a long job ahead of him, like introducing those 2 idiots in their entire records. It's like weighing in at somewhere between 190 and 220, depending on how much coke is in his system. So, Michael Avenatti. So yeah, that would be something.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll take Trump Jr. though. He looks good.
I mean, not to mention at the very bottom of this article, it says Avenatti has also reportedly been encouraged by the DNC to run for the Democratic nomination for president in 2020. Another thing that I really, really, really hope happens.
Me too.
But yeah, just add that to the list of introductions, and yeah, we've got a fight on our hands. So I'm let's just say this: we will keep everyone updated on this developing news bit.
100%. All right, Rob.
All right, so I sent you guys an article. I don't know when it was over the weekend, and it was basically the article was a rundown about how Susie Orman came out and said, and Susie Orman's this lady financial guru whose advice I would highly recommend you avoid. But basically, she has this advice that says you need $5 million to retire early, and that's the minimum. So I'm not going to go into all that. I've done a billion podcasts on how retirement works. Let me just say this: she's wrong. So I'm going to pivot over to this story. Over the weekend as well, my wife and I saw this movie called A Star Is Born. Now, this movie has been remade about 14 times. Really 5. But this is a film with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. It was amazing. Number 1 film of the year for me, for sure. And it's made $65 million on a $36 million budget for a mid-October film. It's crushing it at the box office right now. So, opening shot / news bit. Go see A Star Is Born. It's very, very good. And what was interesting at the end of the movie, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I was surrounded by women in the theater. Everybody was crying except for me. So I had all these tears of middle-aged to senior citizen women like crying in stereo. It was awful. but the film was great. So
yeah. Well, that would be me because I'm a movie crier. I'll admit it. I'll put it out there.
I cry. Yeah, I cry. Just not during this one because I was like, whatever.
Fair.
So I'm sorry. Did I miss it? Was there a connection between Susie Orman and the movie?
No.
Or did you just
Nope.
did you just pivot? Because if that's the case, I
was
kind
a
of
full-
got whiplash there.
It was like a pro hop. It's not even a pivot. So it was like you're in the key.
Yeah, it's like a crab
you know.
dribble.
Yeah.
I was
It was
waiting
It was like
for
a
the
Tyler
connection.
Hansbrough of all pivots.
Like this this musician, made so much
No,
money
I
he was
just-
able to retire early or something. Like I'm just
No, I sent you guys the article, and I was like, I really don't like Susie Orman, and the main reason is because she's manipulated people in some pretty big ways with some of her debit card products that she claimed would report a FICO score, which it did not, even though everyone told her it would not, and she still pimped it as if it did. She manipulated gold prices for all of her followers, and then sold right when it peaked. So she's just a monster. So I was like, I don't want to give her the airtime, but I just did. So yeah, A Star Is Born. Check it out, guys.
Fair. All right, so I kind of have a twofer. I just want to point out that we're talking about the strange timeline that we're in. I just want to point out that only in our timeline could the Braves, the Indians, and the Redskins all lose on Columbus Day.
So racist.
that's amazing.
So racist.
So, and
Bunch
in
of racist
horrible
teams.
fashion, like they all got blown out.
But you know what? We
Those-
all lose on Leif Erikson Day.
It's almost as if they came down with smallpox or something.
Yikes. So you're saying the Americans took a commanding, 311 million to 0 lead.
Yep.
Commanding.
Yep. So as a piggyback to that, I saw was Alyssa Milano, right? I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, she had a tweet about it was Indigenous Peoples Day, and she supports all the indigenous people of the earth.
Love it.
And someone quoted her tweet and said, "Okay, I want to know about all these non-indigenous to the earth people that Milano knows. Like, who does she know who's not indigenous to the earth?" So
Old white guys.
the truth is out
Old
there.
white guys.
The truth is out there. All right, so my actual news bit is based off of a Gallup survey. Gallup has every year since 2000 and a few times before that, they have asked the question about what your level of trust and confidence in your politicians is. And I'm pleased to report that 55% of Americans have said that they have a great deal or fair amount of confidence in politicians. That is a 10-year high, and it is up 7 percentage points from a year ago, and 13 points from the record low in September of 2016. So it's a little kind of counterintuitive, but really not, because we've just cleared out the swamp. So all those swampy politicians, they're out of there, and we just nothing but blue skies and trust and fairy dust. So there you are.
Does it say why, or is it just reporting the information, or does it have
It's Gallup.
theories?
It's Gallup. It's going to just report the information. They're not going to. They don't really opine.
So it did say that that poll was conducted prior to the Kavanaugh confirmation and all of the allegations as well. So it threw that in there. I don't know that would necessarily affect it, but
Yeah. Well, it was prior to the allegations, not prior to the confirmation, or not prior to his appointment, because it was in July he was appointed. But yeah,
gotcha.
it was like the week before these allegations came out.
So I mean, my thing with this is the average person, do they even pay attention enough to care about a lot of this stuff? Like if you're, as long as something drastically is not affecting your life, like I think it's probably fair to say, I've got a great deal or fair amount of trust in someone that's half the country away that doesn't really affect my life. Like, I just wonder if, especially in the world of politics, for those of us who have worked in politics, like we hear the nitty gritty stuff every single day that the average person is like, I don't even know what that is. What's a Kavanaugh? Or whatever the issue is of the day. And, I don't know. I just wonder if it doesn't come down to just ignorance. And that's not that it should be higher, it should be lower. I don't really have an opinion on that. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a balance of ignorance and apathy. But also I think, and we're going to be going over this, I think, probably in the next couple weeks when we talk about the midterms. But, things are going pretty well politically for those in, a lot of demographics across the spectrum. You look at unemployment's the lowest in all of our lifetimes. None of us on this podcast have seen unemployment where it's at right now. And if you were born, I think after 1970, I believe that is. So if you were born after 1970, you've never seen unemployment at this level in your lifetime. And I think that when it comes to the renegotiating trade deals and certain things, like things are benefiting people politically. I don't know if it's necessarily benefiting people economically. But I think that plays into it. I think you're going to be more trusting if you feel things are actually getting done that you actually care about. So that's kind of my 2 cents of just opining on what that means.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep. I really don't have. I mean, it's 7% increase
year over year. Mm-hmm. And 13 above its low. So, I mean, obviously,
yeah,
it's not like it's a wide swing.
No, and it's under 10%, and it's so close to the margin of error. It's like 2x what the margin of error probably is, so it's not, whatever. Things are getting a little better. I will say, the more this economy plays out, the more I start to agree that it's doing better. I was a big naysayer because unemployment, like labor participation, is very low compared to where it was 10 years ago. So that does play a role in the unemployment figures, but it's not the role. So, but as the economy ticks on, I'm starting to see that it is actually fairly secure. The only area that I'm concerned about right now is student loans. But
right. Yes,
go Trump for economy. For character and everything else, integrity, not so much.
Yeah, which, by the way, I just want to tease a little thing. The new messaging that he's running with on the mob, and you don't want to give over our good economy to the mob, is absolutely amazing messaging for the midterms. And now you're hearing everybody say that. Like, hey, why in the world would you hand over this car to a crazed, wild, drunken mob? And they're all doing like different bits on it, but it's really playing well in polling. And I think that you see that in the latest polling in a couple key states, Tennessee, Texas. So, anyways, it'll be interesting to see, and we're going to do all of our projections and conjectures on that at a later time. But our serious segment this week, we've talked about the economy, we've talked about finance, we've talked about different things. We are going to delve into a moral and ethical question. So, Jeremiah, you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah. So this evening, or whenever you are listening to this at a later date, we're going to discuss the death penalty. So we're gonna talk about kind of the arguments for and against, our personal stances on it, and we're going to talk about capital punishment. So to kind of introduce this topic, what's always interesting to me when I hear people talk about this, especially Christians who talk about the death penalty, especially Christians who are opposed to the death penalty. There's specific ways that people talk about the death penalty. And so what I want to talk about today is I want to kind of delve into the three categories of arguments for and against the death penalty, and kind of pass it to you guys and see what you think, your personal views, and kind of the merits of different arguments for and against. But ultimately, it comes down to three categories. I think first, there's theological implications that are considered. So, as Christians, from a biblical perspective, do governments have the authority to end lives? But maybe even not from a Christian perspective. Another way of saying this might be moral implications. Is it moral? Second, there's financial implications. So people will argue whether capital punishment is financially beneficial or whether it costs less than imprisoning someone for a lifetime. So there's the financial, the fiscal implications there. And then third, there's practical implications. Is the death penalty effective at deterring crime? Is that even the point of the death penalty, to deter crime? But what about those who are wrongly convicted? What about crimes with high rates of recidivism? What about racial or economic concerns as it relates to kind of the difference in sentencing of someone who is in a low income or of a certain minority. So these are kind of the three broad categories, as I was kind of researching up on this topic, that just about all of the arguments for and against this come down to theological / moral implications, financial implications, and practical implications. The problem that I have, though, is when people talk about this issue, a lot of times what they do is they'll bring up a point from one of the categories, but then defend it from another category. So, for instance, I mentioned Christians who talk about this topic. They'll say, the Bible is against murder. Then instead of defending that, or the Bible is against the death penalty, instead of defending that, they'll say, and besides, it costs more money. Capital punishment costs more money to the state. It's not effective in deterring crime. It's not applied evenly among races and economic levels. But it's like, so the question is, in each of these categories, can it be defended? And this is one of those issues that, even as I was researching it and reading different articles for and against, there's really bad arguments for and against they're just emotional driven. They're not related to statistics. I found a lot of conflicting statistics, and so it'll be interesting to talk about. So what I want to do to kind of open this up to you guys is I want you to answer two questions, not whether you're for or against the death penalty, but to answer it this way. From a theological perspective, do governments have the authority to end lives from a biblical perspective? Do they have that authority? Can it be justified biblically? Or is it, let's put it another way to be more broad. Can it be deemed moral? And then, we can do it. And then should we do it? Because then some of the other implications of the cost benefit analysis, the deterrence of crime, the other distinctions there, and the other implications there. So, what do you guys think? First of all, is it moral? Can we do it? And then second of all, should we do it?
Yeah. So from my vantage point, can we do it? Yes, I believe that we have the authority to do that. And I believe we have the authority through Scripture to do that. And I think it makes moral and ethical sense. I think there are some individuals who have so broken the social and moral ethical contract with their fellow citizens that the only way to effectively deal with them is to remove them from the social contract. I'm going to answer the should in a little bit, and it's going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I would like to see us use the death penalty in more applicable cases than we do currently. Right now, we use it for essentially treason, and we use it for murder. And murder, first-degree murder. So murder with deliberate intent. It's kind of like, my question is like, what about the serial killers, the serial rapists? What about those people? I think evil exists, and I think we have a duty to exterminate evil when the evil threatens others. And I don't know that life imprisonment necessarily is the best recourse for that. Now, to the answer of should we? That's a great question. I would like to say that I think it should be rare. Maybe even more rarer than it is now, because there are a lot of systemic justice issues that exist, and I don't want to sugarcoat those. But I do think that for me, does the standard of our justice system, and I'm going to speak just to America, I'm not going to speak to other countries, but does the justice system in America rise to the level of the Old Testament, of having to have two witnesses to an event, etc., to convict? And I think that all in all, I believe it does. So would I like to make sure it's rare, because not everyone is purely evil from the intent that they actually need to be removed from the planet. But that said, why aren't we looking at executing serial rapists or those who would rape children? All for expanding the death penalty usage in those cases. I think that is unredeemable evil. But so I guess that sort of kind of muddles it. Should we? Yes, with a caveat. So.
Okay, Rob.
So remind me, what are the two questions?
So basically, can we, or does the state have the authority to, have a death penalty? Can we? But then more specifically based on the other factors, should we? Is it the best way to move forward?
Oh, I thought there was a theological implication in there somewhere. Is that the?
Well, that's the can we?
Okay, I see.
Do we believe
Gotcha.
as Christians that we have that that God has given the state the authority to end lives, especially in the cases of the some of the worst crimes against humanity.
Okay, I gotcha. So theologically, I'll be honest, it is a very tough case to make one way or the other. Now, some people are probably like, nope, capital punishment is all throughout the Bible. And indeed it is. But the problem is you run into the issue of separate covenants. So, for example, someone who might quote Deuteronomy or Leviticus talking about the death penalty being used for adultery or bestiality or kidnapping or homosexuality are the same people that will, wear shirts with two different fabrics while they're eating shrimp. So the issue is we have to stick with the covenantal law theologically. So what does the new covenant say about this? And does it reference the Old Covenant for the capital punishment? And the answer is no, it does not. Now, the area where I think most people will point to is Romans 13. This is kind of like the blanket. This is kind of like the Christian, Republican, constitutionalist verse for everything. So Romans 13:1, because it mentions government and let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. So this is the idea that God has put all of our leaders in place for a purpose, and that we ought to respect their wishes in cases where they do not contradict Scripture. So can we? Yeah, I mean, I don't really see anything that says we can't. Should we? I agree with Nathan in the sense that I would be for this the death penalty expanding to pedophiles and serial rapists and the like. The issue that I've found with the death penalty, you can stop me if I'm going on too long, is that I agree with what you said, Jeremiah, in the beginning. There aren't very many convincing arguments. People talk about, the cost. Money really shouldn't play a factor in whether or not you end someone's life. They talk about the mistakes that are made, people that are exonerated. But just because there are problems in the criminal justice system does not mean we shouldn't have a criminal justice system. So that doesn't fly either. And then deterring crime. That doesn't really show up well statistically. It's less than 7%. And it's pretty much in the margins of error for the studies that are performed. So that's not overwhelmingly convincing either. So I lean towards pro death penalty, but it has to be extremely detailed, and our execution, pardon the pun, of how we've laid out the death penalty in America hasn't been as detailed or organized as it ought to be. Now, part of that comes with evidence, and as DNA evolves, and our policing and criminal justice system, is more involved with science and how we catch criminals and whatnot. But there is a lot to say, that we've blown it a lot when it comes to the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest issues with how people argue against the death penalty, especially from a biblical perspective, is they'll use, frankly, they'll just proof text, or they'll say just kind of broad generalities, God says, do not murder. It's like, well, there's a big difference between, killing someone in war or, killing someone, what I would consider a justified killing, or, someone who has committed an atrocity. Like there's a vast difference between, walking into someone's house and just murdering them. And the government, the state, ending a life because they have been convicted of a terrible crime. Like there's a big difference. And so when those things are conflated, we get off on little rabbit trails, and we talk about this issue, and we really never really get down to the heart of it. And my thing is, and especially, how I laid it out in the beginning, I think that these are important things to talk about: the theological and moral implications, the financial implications, and the practical implications. But what I would encourage people to do is, if you're going to argue for something, argue for that. Don't say, well, God says do not murder, and also it costs more to kill a criminal than it does to, house them for life. It's like, well, okay, but what's your, what's at the heart of it? What's the
so what? So what if it does?
Yeah. I mean, it's very frustrating to me because I take a pretty similar approach to Nathan, and that is I believe that biblically speaking, you can make the argument for it, that it's at least allowed. But once again, there's a difference between can it be or do governments have that authority I think people would take it too far if they read the Bible and they say that God is instructing all governments to enact capital punishment. I think you're taking that too far. But I think that you have to look at it and say, all right, there's at least the room for that, as at the very least, governments have that authority now, but it's a separate issue of whether they should. And to Nathan's point, it needs to be handled in the right way, and it needs to be handled for the right crimes. Some people would look at the Old Testament and they would look at all of the things that were capital crimes and say, well, would you really want this, and this to be capital crimes? It's like, well, no, but that's not the point. The point is, is it even allowed? Is it even a possibility? And if it is, then we need to make that decision of, all right, what crimes are deserving of that, and how can we do it in a way that makes sense. And so that's kind of where I sit. I think that governments do have the authority to do that. I don't think it's an affront on. Some people would argue it's an affront on the sanctity of life, and they would even. I've heard people call people who are pro-life, hypocrites, because they're pro-life, but they're also pro-capital punishment. And once again, it's categorically, confusing issues, because in one issue you're talking about innocent unborn life, and the other you're talking about someone who has been convicted of a heinous crime. Like, there's a vast difference between innocent life and not an innocent life. So I don't think it's an affront to, the sanctity of life, as some would say. I think that we have the authority to do it, but, like I said, I think that we should take very seriously the implications of that, and are we doing it in a way that makes sense, and are we doing it in a way that ensures that the least amount of collateral damage is happening as possible. But like I said, most people resort to emotional arguments, and there's really no data to back that up, and there's really no solid arguments. It's just emotional. Like, I don't like the idea of the death penalty, so therefore it shouldn't happen. And I have a different stance than that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And like, for me, it comes down to, are natural rights just individual rights, or are they communal rights? Are they rights held by the community? And what do I mean by that? So I believe that the right to self-defense is a natural right. And I don't believe all killing is murder. And I think that the Bible is very, very clear on that. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill. There's a distinct difference between killing and murder. And so self-defense is one of those things, right? So I believe everyone here agrees that we have a right to self-defense. So if someone breaks into our house and they threaten our family with bodily harm, we have the right to self-defense. We can take action on that and take care of that person. Similarly, I think that I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I believe in just war theory. So I believe that killing on the battlefield is not murder. Now, it is not to say that it is something that should be taken lightly. And I think that's the other thing too, is that people just say, well, because you're saying that it is not necessarily murder means that you just can willy-nilly kill people on the battlefield, right? Because there are some killings that could happen on the battlefield that would not be justified. Just like there could be killings happening, if someone comes into your house, that's kind of a bad example, but if someone punches you in the nose, okay, does that mean you have the right to kill them? And the answer is no. There's a strict a very stricter standard on, what level of force you use, right? So what I mean by all that then is, are those same natural rights, are they communal? Meaning, do we as a community have the right to self-defense? And if we as a community have the right to self-defense, and the government has a right to self-defense, then the government is able to sanction that self-defense and defend its people. And that's why we incarcerate people. The government has the right to communally incarcerate people to protect the citizenry. That's a functionary of self-defense. They have a right to defend their borders. They have a right to defend their country against terrorism or other bad actors, up and to include removing those people. So I think it's, if you believe that at some level the government has that right to self-defense, then I don't see scripturally where that self-defense stops short of killing. And that would be my number one argument for the death penalty, just like self-defense being justified, because I think that it's not just an individual right; it's a communal one.
Yeah, that it speaks to one of the things I really appreciated about what you said is that just because, and one of the reasons I wanted to make the distinction between can and should and how should we do it is because just because we allow that states could have the authority to do so, governments have the authority to do so, doesn't mean that we want every little tiny crime to, possession of a small amount of weed to be a capital crime. Like there's in this issue, there is a lot of room for discussion, and there's a lot of room for even disagreements on, okay, we agree on the general principle, but how that is enacted, we can disagree. And this is one of the issues too, that like I've seen some polarization that it's for it or against it, and that's it. Well, there should be a lot of leeway. There should be a lot of gray area in between, that you can be for it in a theoretical sense, but not necessarily for it in the way that it is enacted in a given state or, as a whole in our country.
Absolutely.
So theologically, just curious, what do you guys think is from like a scale of 1 to 10? It's kind of a juvenile way to approach it, but what do you think is the strength of a case to be made for capital punishment theologically?
For me personally, I think it's like 9s or 10s.
With like a 10 being like the deity of Christ, and a 1 being whatever the hell Mormons teach.
Yeah, or more importantly, like 10 being like a commandment, right? Like something that's explicit.
Yeah, something that's clear.
Yeah.
It's explicit.
So maybe not a 10. I would say probably 8 or 9 then, because it obviously is not explicitly commanded. But I think that it's there's enough structural inference there for me to believe it.
Yeah, I would say pretty similar, probably around a 7. It's definitely not maybe a 6 or a 7. It's definitely not a command. It's definitely not a, we have to do this, but it's definitely, in my view, it's definitely allowed.
Okay. See, I'm at like a 5 or a 6, just because it's the leaning, right? Like I get it, and there's nothing that says you can't do it. I just don't see it super clear. You have to piece a lot of things together. But like I said, I'm definitely pro. But someone could make a very convincing case the other side and probably sway me if the evidence was there, but I haven't seen it so far. Yeah, it's a tough one, especially for, I know a lot of Christians as well. They'll Jesus kind of contrasts the old eye for an eye with turn the other cheek. And that's another popular text that they'll use, saying, well, that's how it used to be. If someone harmed us, we would harm them back. But now we turn the other cheek. But I think that's much more for a personal life, not a governmental system. So,
well, yeah, and
good
that's
stuff.
And that's what I would say too. Is there's a difference between personal commandments and what is allowed or authorized, from a governmental standpoint. My thing is that there's a lot of the same people that make the argument that we're not a theocracy, so our faith and public lives should be completely separate. But they're the same people that would use texts like that to be against the death penalty, that it shouldn't be done because Jesus says not an eye for an eye, but rather turn the other cheek. And so there's some inconsistency there that, okay, are there principles that, as a whole, if every person, whether they're a Christian or not, followed, that we would be a better society? Yes. But does that mean that does that mean that every command in Scripture should be codified in law? And the answer to that is, no, probably not. And so there is a distinction, but at least be consistent in that distinction, and not, on the one hand, claiming separation of church and state in every possible way, and faith and public life don't mix, but on the other hand, still wanting to utilize Scripture to justify your public positions on how policy should run. And there's far too many people out there that are doing that.
Yeah. Another question I have is, so let's say that we could develop a methodology for gaining some additional revenue off of this policy. And what I'm talking about very obviously is pay-per-view capital punishment, right?
So how it used to be back in the days.
It was free, though. I'm talking about doing a Dana White and mixing it up a little bit. What do you guys think?
Is your question whether that we should, whether we think that should happen, or whether we would personally, take part in that, like gladiator style?
Well, we're only 52 minutes in, so let's go both.
So I know you're being tongue in cheek, but I would say that's not. There is a way to do things with a little bit of dignity, right? And that's the reason that even historically, why there's two executioners, so that it doesn't have to fall onto one person's conscience. Those kind of things that are kind of traditional within our sense of, even though we believe the state has a right to do it, we're going to take great care in how we do it. Which, again, speaking to Jeremiah's point, to the should, I don't think all states should do it. Like, I'm opposed to Iranian capital punishment because I don't think it's a just system. And,
sure.
And so, and there are some legitimate concerns about whether our system systemically rises to that level of just. And I think it does, more so than not. I don't, but I understand the point, but just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. And there are definitely a lot of states on the world scene that their system is completely unjust. And while they may have the moral authority to do it because they are a government, doesn't mean that they have the moral blessing to do it.
So let me ask you this, kind of a statement and a question, and that is, in my research, I heard a lot about, whether it be, systemic racism, whether it be, the system unfairly targeting those of lower incomes, et cetera, et cetera. My kind of general view on this, as it relates to this, not necessarily all crimes, but as it relates to capital punishment, I think that there are certain crimes that are so heinous. Nathan, you mentioned this, that individual has broke the social contract like so much that it is just irrevocably broken, that the only option is capital punishment at that point. And if that is the case, then there really is no systemic racism. There is no issues with incomes. There's no other factors. And part of the problem in certain cases is that our legal system allows for a lot of leeway in sentencing for certain crimes. Like why is it that some people are given the death penalty when other people are not for the same crime? That's a problem, especially that. My point is that leads to things like systemic racism. But if, for instance, serial rape is, and that has a certain definition, then if that is a capital crime, then if you have a history of serial rape, whatever that definition is, 5, 7, 10 times, then it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Asian, poor, rich. Like there should be so I guess my question is, does that in some ways, does that solve the problem? Does the fact that we have, I don't want to say leniency, but the fact that we have a disparity in sentencing on certain heinous crimes allow for, well, I'm going to, whether knowingly or unknowingly, give a lighter sentence to this white person as opposed to this black person?
Yeah, I think that's when you have a clear and defined standard. The peripheral arguments of racism and classism are going to be, they're not going to be relevant, right? Because you have a clear and defined system. The problem is, you brought up, we don't really have that. Like if we had a policy that said if we have these 3 or 4 check boxes in place, and the crime at the center of all this is, let's say, raping a child, and we have witnesses and DNA evidence and whatever those criterion points are, then you're going to die. You're going to be sentenced to death. And it's very clear, and it's established what the guidelines are. There's no pleading out. There's no lesser of a crime. You'll still get a trial. But if all these things are brought about, then that's what's going to occur. And we don't really have that. We have a lot of leniency and a lot of pleading out, and there's not a lot of consistency with the death penalty. Plus, I think the split's like 30 to 20, or maybe 31 to 19 of states that have the death penalty and states that do not. So someone could kill 20 people in Michigan, life in prison. Kill 20 people in Texas, you're going to die fairly soon. Even in our country, it's split so differently, and a lot of that is Constitution, 10th Amendment stuff. So yeah, it's interesting.
So here's a question for you guys: How many people? I have it pulled up. So how many people were executed in the United States last year?
I mean, it's pretty low. I would say, I would say less than 100. 90, let's say.
I was going to go 70.
23.
Okay. Yeah.
20 in 2016, 28 2015. The high water mark since 1976, when it was reinstituted by the Supreme Court, is 98 in 1999. So total since 1976, 1,483 people have been executed, and that since 1976, and I guarantee you there's been a lot more than 1,483 rapes and murders and such. So,
for sure.
To my point, it is something that is exceedingly rare. And so we have a pretty high standard for going that route already.
Yeah. It is interesting that you said 23, it really doesn't get a lot of media coverage. There's a couple that I see every year, a couple of states that are maybe controversial, or they're trying to do a last minute appeal or get the governor to phone in, but it's not really a mainstream issue as far as seeing it. That's 2 per month. We don't see that.
Yeah, there's been 18 so far in 2018.
Yeah.
So it's probably pretty much on track for that same amount, give or take.
Hitting that quota.
Yeah, nowhere near.
It's
nowhere.
It's Q4, guys. Step it up.
Oh man, yeah. No, so I mean, I'd definitely be interested in our listeners' thoughts on the topic.
Definitely. And how can they reach out to us?
That's a great question, Nathan. I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad that was in the show notes for you to ask.
Good work.
Yeah,
good work actually looking at the show notes, guys.
Rob, don't even have it pulled up. I just
we
was looking for a natural segue. That was all natural.
Oh man, I'm proud of you.
Nice.
Proud of you.
We have show notes.
Shush, Rob. All right. So, for those who would like to comment on this, probably the easiest way, the way that would make the most sense is to join our Facebook group. You can access the group by going to moneypowerpod.com/group, and that forwards directly to the Facebook group. And we would love to have you join that discussion group. We talk about a lot of various topics. Honestly, just about everything we've covered, and so we'd love to have your input there. Talk about topics for upcoming shows. We talk about things we've already talked about, and kind of dive a little bit deeper into the discussion. And so that'd be a perfect place for you to do that. But you can also hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at MoneyPowerPod. And you can email us at info@moneypowerpod.com. So we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Do we have the authority to enact the death penalty? And if we do, or even if we don't, should we? Is that something that we should do as a country and as a people? So we'd love to hear from you guys.
All right. And speaking of feedback, what kind of feedback have we gotten back this week?
We've gotten with the discussion group. The majority of our stuff is coming from the discussion group, and so we've had discussions on the Supreme Court, the Kavanaugh confirmation stuff. Recently, this week, there has been quite a few Facebook messages being sent around about changing your password, about someone sending a duplicate friend request, about all of these Facebook hacks. And so there's been just a plethora of memes related to the Facebook hacking hoax, and all that goes into that. But a lot of fun conversations there, and then we've got some topics for future shows. And so we've got some fun stuff on the docket coming up. Debate on abortion. We're gonna, Nathan, you alluded to this earlier. Within the next couple weeks, we're gonna talk about our predictions for the midterm elections. So we got a lot of fun stuff, and a lot of those topics have come from suggestions from our listeners. So I'll hold off on those, but we will get to those, and so we really appreciate all the feedback.
Lots of Kavanaugh talk.
Yes.
Oh boy, too much Kavanaugh talk, in my opinion.
Justice Kavanaugh now. So
That's right.
All right. This episode of Money and Power is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Use discount code MAP for 20% off all your orders at strikeforceenergy.com. You simply add 1 pack to a standard half-liter water bottle or 16-ounce glass to turn your water into a full-power energy drink. Each flavor pack is a liquid that is sugar and calorie-free, but adds an explosion of energy and flavor to any beverage. There's no mixing, stirring, or shaking, and the flavor will never settle to the bottom like crystals or syrup. Provides caffeine, taurine, potassium, and B vitamins. Comes in lemon, orange, grape, and original flavors for a healthier alternative to canned energy drinks. Use discount code MAP for 20% off your order at strikeforceenergy.com. Kick the can or be lit AF. I added that.
That's right.
I like it.
Guys, I had 1 packet of Strikeforce Energy left today, and I waited, and I used it just for this podcast, and I'm out. Normally I use enough Strikeforce to fill up a 32-ounce bottle for podcasts, just to give me that extra little boost, pep in my step when we're recording. I only had 16 ounces, guys, so I'm feeling good, but I have an order on the way, and I am looking forward to getting out, because I'm now officially out, guys. It's not good, guys. It's not good.
All right, well, make sure you use that discount code.
I did. I
and
did.
we'll be all good. All right. Now it's time for parting shots.
Are we doing our last plug at the very end? Or are we not doing it?
At the very end. It's going to do it
Very end.
after parting shots.
Very good. All right, I'm just asking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we didn't talk about
Well,
when that's going to be either, so we need to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because these immaculate show notes don't show it. So, anyways, parting shots.
All right, very good. I got a shotgun blast this time.
Like it. Jeremiah.
It's pretty good.
So I mentioned earlier some feedback that we've gotten in our Facebook discussion group. One of the things that listener Kevin Small put in the group was an article from the Babylon Bee. He says, I know this is satire, but it really does seem the left really has learned no lessons from 2016 and continue to alienate the moderates and energize their opponents with their hateful rhetoric. But what he's referencing is a Babylon Bee article that says the left learns an important lesson from the Kavanaugh fight. They need to be even more obnoxious. My parting shot is this. Personally, I love the Babylon Bee. And I recently signed up for their email newsletter. I don't even read the articles, but most of the time I don't. But just the headlines are just so amazing. They have been just incredibly on point lately, and so I get their newsletter. It comes every couple days, and it's just a mashup of recent Babylon Bee articles, which, for those who don't know, is a satirical website. And so I'm just going to read you some of the headlines from today's newsletter. Democrats, we may have lost the SCOTUS seat, but at least we kept our dignity. And it's a screenshot of protesters clawing at the Supreme Court door. So just on point there. Another one says, quote, Kavanaugh doesn't have the right temperament, end quote, screams protester lobbing grenade outside Supreme Court. MAGA hat wearing Kanye West interrupts Taylor Swift as she tries to endorse Democratic candidate.
I'm going to let you finish, but Ted Cruz, 2018.
Next, we have to make up for extra difficult confirmation process, Kavanaugh awarded 2 votes on Supreme Court. Some church categories. Church installs gong for when pastor stumbles into theologically dubious territory. Taylor Swift finally breaks theological silence, comes out in support of amillennialism. A little bit of inside baseball there, but what's the one I was looking at earlier? This one's good. Revolutionary thinker suggests Columbus was bad. And he's just got like a hipster looking guy, but yeah, they are so on point and just speaking to the current issues of our day. They make fun of the left and the right. They make fun of they make fun of faith and church and culture, and it's a lot of fun. So even if you don't read the articles, I'd suggest signing up for the newsletter because it's always on point.
One thing I like about the B is that there's always someone in the comments saying, they're like, well, this really just pushed me over the limit. I'm going to unsubscribe. I can't follow this anymore. And it's like, dude, satire.
Why? Yeah, exactly.
Like you shouldn't have followed it to begin with, loser.
But I mean, isn't that the point of satire though? Like it's the whole point of satire. And if you look at the history of it, it's intentionally supposed to kind of poke and prod at, right, powerful systems. Like, so if you feel uncomfortable with it because it's making fun of your point of view, that's kind of the point.
Exactly.
So if it's not, then they're not doing their job. But yeah, good stuff. Babylon Bee, definitely highly recommend it.
All right, Rob, what do you got?
All right, so I have been in a lot of conversations over the last couple weeks, and there is this reoccurring theme, and I counted, and this has happened at least 10 times in the last week. So on the way home today, it happened again. I was on the phone with somebody. I hung up after I said goodbye, of course. I'm not rude. And I said, you know what? I don't have a parting shot for tonight, so I just recorded one on a voice memo. So I'm going to play it. I haven't listened back to it, so I apologize. I don't think there's any profanity in it, but I was pretty frustrated. And it might seem trivial. But I don't think it is. So we'll chat about it after it's done. It's about 2 minutes. All right, so one thing I want to talk about on the show tonight, I'm doing this in a memo because I doubt that I'll be able to capture it with such anger and precision as I'm going to right now. So there's 2 phrases that are completely irritating to me. And the absolute worst thing that you can do after me saying this is say these phrases to me because I'll hate you. Literal hate. We're done professionally. That's how much I'll hate it. So the first one is, it is what it is. When someone says to me, it is what it is, my exact response, and you can ask my wife, anytime someone says this to me, is, no duh, of course it is, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be. Of course it is what it is. Like, what a stupid phrase. What a stupid thing for someone to say in response to an issue. Like, could you go a layer deeper, maybe, and tap into that awesome vernacular that you have? You remind me of Trump. I have words. I have the best words. It's like, come on, bro. Like, do better. It is what it is. All right, cool. Like, that just tells me you don't have any deeper response to whatever it is we're talking about. All right, so the second phrase is people don't know what they don't know. It's like there is a pandemic of people just repeating the same phrase twice, as if that is the philosophical depth of Kant or Lewis. philosophizing about the deepest of all topics. It's irritating as hell. I hate it. People don't know what they don't know. Oh, they don't? I didn't know. Thank you so much for informing me on that most important thought, that I never would have came to that conclusion that people don't know what they don't know. So if people do know something, are you telling me that they do know it? Oh, very deep, very deep. So anyhow, those are my two points, and I'll probably use this as my parting shot for tonight because I'm irritated beyond all imagination when someone says one of these two phrases to me. So if you want to stay my friend, don't use this as an opportunity to make a fun little joke, because it's not funny at all. So, Rob out.
It is what it is the missionary position of colloquialisms, is what I heard.
Basically. Yeah, it's like... The thing is, I'll be talking with someone, and I'll be like, whether I'm doing like counseling or consulting or whatever, and we'll get to like the end of this problem, and like we just went through all of these deep things. And he's like, yeah, whatever, it is what it is. It's like, no, like it's not. Like it is, but it isn't. Like there's so much more than just that, but you're summarizing it like a douche. I hate it. Sorry, guys.
That's all right, man.
It's a popular phrase. I went to, when we were in South Haven this weekend, every t-shirt shop that we walked by had that on a shirt, and I was like, it's losing my mind. So
I feel that there's got to be some childhood memories that these angsty feelings come from.
Yeah, your father and I are getting a divorce. It is what it is.
Well, when we first got married, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah. Yep.
And now that we know what we know, it is what it is.
And the we know is that we were pregnant with you, and it's not what we wanted. It's not what we wanted.
Man, that's pretty awesome. I appreciate it. I vehemently disagree with your sentiments, but
you said you don't agree?
What's that?
You said you don't agree?
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, it is what it is.
That's all right.
I don't mind your opinion on that, but I don't necessarily agree on we don't know what we don't know. So I think it's
the same thing.
No,
it's
not.
The exact same thing.
It's actually no.
We
it's
don't
actually
know what we don't know.
Okay, I wasn't going to get into this. I was just going to say I politely disagree. But
well,
since
you're wrong.
Since you want to get into this, here's the deal.
We really don't know what we don't know, guys.
No, the point of the statement is not the things that we don't know. Obviously, we don't know. The point is that you don't know your blind spots. That's the point. The point of it is that you have blind spots and you don't even know that you have those blind spots. If you know you have a blind spot, then by definition it's not a blind spot and you can fix the issue. But if you don't know where your deficiencies are, for instance, I don't know how to edit a podcast. I know that I don't know that. And so I can fix that. But if I think that I can edit a podcast and then I go to edit a podcast, I'm like, oh, wow, I just failed miserably at that task. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think there's just more nuance to it than what you're giving to it. But that being said, the only reason I'm passionate about this is because you pushed me a little bit on it. I really don't care that much, but you pushed me, Rob. I'm gonna push back.
Well, it is what it is. I just don't.
All right, see you guys later.
Should be upset about colloquialisms. So I think colloquialisms are colloquialisms for a reason, and some of them are annoying, and some of them are overused. But whatever.
I straight up thought you were going to say colloquialisms are colloquialisms. Like, dude. Just stop.
Colloquialisms are colloquialisms. So, anyways,
That's a tough word to say, especially twice in a row.
It is. Those colloquialisms.
I will
The
say,
Red Sox just won, by the way.
I will say I don't. My pet peeve is not sayings themselves, but the way that people misuse sayings. That's my thing. It's like, just when people just completely say the wrong thing, I'm just like, no, that's not even the saying. So,
Yeah, like misusing "you don't know what you don't know" as some kind of self-help.
Which is still like, why don't you just say you don't know how to edit a podcast? Why do you gotta have it like a riddle, like you're a Batman villain? Like, just tell me you don't know how to cut a show.
Anyways, all right.
Killing me, Smalls.
So my parting shot.
I'm just so tempted to just keep going on this.
No,
I was gonna leave it, Rob, and then
we're going to the mattresses. Anyways, I don't even know
Gross.
where that comes from. All right, so my parting shot is
speaking of missionary position.
An announcement. I have an announcement.
We're renaming the show to Money and Power Junior High Edition.
Money and power, because we love redundancy.
No, it's just money and money.
Oh, my favorite is, so what's the show about? It's like, it's about money and power. It's kind of in the title. Anyways, speaking of our... Jeez. I can't even. All right, so the...
You should introduce the podcast that way. You know, welcome to episode 26 of Money and Power, where we talk about issues related to money and power.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, my announcement.
So do you want to hear us speak live?
Yes.
That's the
question. If you do, if you want to witness this in a live setting, in person, then you want to mark down your calendar, because we are going to be doing a 2-day conference in Mansfield, Ohio in February. And we're going to be releasing all those details, but you can do the save the date, and I have to pull up my calendar because I'm going to completely screw up the date if I don't. And it is on the 23rd and 24th of February in Mansfield, Ohio. So if you'd like to join us, we would love to have you with us. We're going to be talking about Rob's going to be talking about money. I'm going to be talking about power, and Jeremiah is going to be talking about the ampersand and all of its history.
That's right.
Yeah, Jeremiah's parking the cars.
Jeremiah brings the ampersand. That is what he brings. He's the and.
It's ampersand, isn't it? I don't think there's a T.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I don't know what I don't know, so why are you asking me?
Sure.
I obviously
It's
said
true.
it one way.
It's true, he doesn't. Yeah, so the conference is going to be 2 days. On the schedule right now, we have 9 sessions over those 2 days. And the very last session that we're going to do is a live recording of this show. And that episode will be archived. That won't go on the feed right away. So you have to be there to hear that episode of the show, which is unique. So 9 sessions. Jeremiah, you have the website? I know we have the tickets and some info up already, right?
Yeah, it's moneypowerpod.com/tickets.
There it is. And if you have a church, if you want to advertise the conference at your church, you can get a hold of us at Network. Is it Network or Info? I always forget. I'm not the
Info.
I'm the Info. Yeah. So you can get a hold of us at info@moneypowerpod.com, and we can talk about group rates for the conference.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Easy as peasy.
Yep. It's
And
going to be like a Tony Robbins conference. I'm going to walk around and make people cry and talk about their childhood. It's going to be a great time.
It's going to be a blast. And it is ampersand. There is no T. So there you are. But that's why Jeremiah brings the ampersand, because he understands it.
So one more thing on the conference. So right now we're doing early bird prices, right? So on the website right now, if you go up there, it's $75 for an individual and $99 for a couple. And then if you have a group or a church that you're going to market it to, we can talk about group rates offline. So it'll be a good time. I'm going to be presenting on the 9 moves and then doing some talks on money and shame, and then Nathan's going to do some leadership chat, and then Jeremiah's doing some culture talk. So I think it'll be a really good conference. We're going to have it recorded, and it's going to be really, really good.
Yes, and so we are planning on having a few of these in 2019 and through 2020. So we're in the planning stages. If you have a church and you would like us to come and do this conference at your church, you can reach out to us as well, and we can get you on the schedule.
Absolutely.
Word.
So, exciting stuff. Exciting stuff. All right. Anything else, guys?
And I promise at the conference we'll be 20% more excited than we are on this last conference promotion.
I'm just worried that I'm going to say some kind of colloquialism that's going to send you into a fit of rage. And then Jeremiah's going to defend it, and we're going to go on for another 20 minutes on this. So I'm treading carefully.
I still haven't got over it. I'm rearing to go. We need a post show. We need to talk about this some more.
16 ounces of Strike Force energy in my butt. You got a lot more than that. Going firecracker over here.
That's just evidence.
Well, if it's nasally ingested, it lasts longer and it's more potent. So
yeah, there you go.
Kind of up some lines of Strike Force. This credit card.
Snorting the liquid. That sounds dangerous.
He's like Pacino. He's just got a liquid mound in front of him.
All right. But so what is that? What is that website they can go to again? It is Money Power.
It's moneypowerpod.com
moneypowerpod.com
/tickets.
Thank you. Thank you for bailing me out on that. All right. Yes, go, and we would love to see you guys. But yeah, we are stoked about the direction this is going on. We have the network coming up, and we didn't talk about the network. If you would like to join our network, you can go to moneypowerpod.com /network, right?
Correct.
All right. And we're going to be doing a introductory call on this next week. So if you would like information, sign up, and we'll give you information on that call that we're going to be doing next week.
Yeah. So the way that's going to work is for the people who have already applied or have shown interest, we'll send all the details of a call next week. And so if you have a podcast or you want to start a podcast, or even if you maybe you want to be a part of a podcast but you don't want to be the head person, there's a lot of categories of people that can fit into the network. So if you have any interest at all, or if you just want to find out some more information and help us spread the word, sign up at moneypowerpod.com /network, and we will send you the information for the just an informational introductory conference call on that. No pun intended, but network with some other podcasts and some other hosts, and get the word out there about what we're trying to accomplish and answer any questions that you might have. So moneypowerpod.com /network, sign up there, and we will send you the information for the conference call next week.
Outstanding. Well, without further ado, for Jeremiah Martin, for Rob Johnson, I am Nathan Martin saying good night and good luck. because it is what it is.
I got the
What was that? What was that last part?
Nothing.
Oh, all right. Very good.
I got the money and the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just wanna take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on?